From the EFDD for a minute and a half.
Madam President, very kind of you. Nice to see you again. In principle, I support the questions the Budgetary Control Committee has put forward to the Commission. Corruption, both political and economic, puts a huge drain on our respective countries' resources, and we must take every effort to plug the leaks. I cannot, however, support any calls for the EU to make recommendations to harmonise laws at EU level or interfere with member states' internal affairs. It should only be our elected and accountable national governments that take measures and propose actions to root it out, not unaccountable EU institutions in Brussels. It is also rather laughable that the EU should lecture member states on corruption. The irony, I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, is not lost on me or on other honourable members in this House. The fact that the Commission discontinued its own anti-corruption report on itself shows how seriously they take this issue. However, even then, the report did not include corruption in EU institutions. There must be more light shone down the dark and murky corridors of power in the EU. Transparency International shows that corruption perceptions in Bulgaria rank them 71 out of 180, which is not much better than China. This again highlights why the UK voted to leave the EU. We have had enough of corrupt institutions wasting billions of taxpayers' money at home in the UK without another tranche of it at European level. Why should the United Kingdom be in political union with these countries, sending billions of our hard-earned taxpayers' money abroad, while they have lower legal standards and a frightening lack of audit and accountability over their own affairs? This, I'm sure, is quite beyond me and beyond many of you, I should imagine. We should all be working as sovereign, independent states to help each other to root out corruption in our own backyards and not be forced to comply with EU laws which do not have proper democratic controls. I will listen intently to what the Commission has to say about the Budgetary Control Committee's questions, and I do hope, even though we are leaving, that the vast improvements of transparency and accountability are made. There is certainly room for improvement. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, Madam President.
Monsieur Coburn, acceptez-vous?
Mr. Coburn, there's a blue card. Would you, from Mr. Davor, would you accept it, sir?
Alors c'est parti. Monsieur Yavor.
Okay, Mr. Yavor.
Mr. President. Mr. Coburn, you mentioned that you do not support law harmonisation and European-level actions against corruption, but what would you like to do with those corruption cases which have the nature of cross-border nature, when corruption activities are happening in different member states and organised crime groups are playing the game between the gaps of the independent national member state authorities, and they always win this game? How do you manage this problem when the individual member state authorities are not able to effectively step against those international organised crime activities?
Thank you, sir. Yes, it's a very good question. I believe that countries, individual countries within the European Union, should work with each other. I do not believe we should have an overarching government of Europe making these sort of decisions. I think we should work with each other. We always have in the past, we can in the future. As you say, there are cracks through which things fall. Well, that's for us to sort out. It's not beyond the wit of man or woman. It's not a complicated problem. I think that an overarching federal bureau of investigations, as some people want to have it, as they have in America, is not a good thing. I think we must retain our independence. We are not a unitary country.
Merci,
we are many countries working together, and I think that's much better.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Coburn.